welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on your own screens with our magnificent guest, Martin Schneider, we haven't had for some time here on your screens. I apologize for a bit the late starter, such as the machine didn't want to follow my orders, so you missed some of the intro. So if you like our very cool intro to see in full length, just watch the recording again. As we have 31 centigrades in my charming home office right now, and the cool breeze is coming from my ventilator, I'm grateful that we have some cool and some hot topics we would like to discuss with Martin. First, I would like to give a short review on what I learned about Martin when I digged in a bit, and I recall that we had him as a regular guest, and we have seen him in different roles already at Sugar, at Support Logic, and in Unitas, as an expert in our conversations, whatever topic we touched. Now, Martin is on the move again, and he found, to say so, a new home with a man who is capable of, even that we do not know how he does develop Star Trek technology and knows how to beam. Famous Ray Wang from Constellation is now your boss, and you are currently Vice President and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. Your career spans both analyst and marketing practitioner roles, primarily focusing on high technology and related industries. But you still know how to fix a motorbike, which is very important. So you are a real practical guy. You started your career as a journalist covering B2B technologies and quickly transitioned then into the leading analyst role covering application software for the 451 Group in New York. After analyzing the go-to-market strategies of dozens of technology vendors, you moved to the vendor side when you led successfully go-to-market teams for several startups and established tech providers. In the current role of Constellation Research, we are curious to learn what type of research you are going to produce and what you will analyze in more detail, and what is around the modern go-to-market and growth marketing strategies for the broad set of B2B professionals. And you are also advising on the impact of AI in growth operations, CRM, sales force automation, and customer success technologies. And I would like to add, we know that you also have a lot of knowledge in marketing automation and very much in how to make the help desk a nicer place in the world. Yeah. Welcome, Martin, again. And if there's anything what I have left out, please add it.
Yeah, I think you saw my whole life flash before my eyes, but it's I think, one of the things, just to really kind of hone in on what I'll be doing at Constellation, and I'm super excited to be here, and it's such a great crew, and working, especially closely with Liz Miller as we kind of round out that like sales marketing alignment as we've kind of moved from sales and marketing or revenue to growth and thinking about growth operations. That's really that kind of coverage area where, going from like Salesforce automation and like RevOps management to really, as this transforms into a growth ops and a really kind of idea of like scalable, repeatable growth strategies under a chief growth officer. And I've talked about that a lot, in my last role, and kind of was hinting at that in roles before that idea that the CRO needs to almost merge with a COO to kind of become more of a chief growth officer, right? As if we're looking at, where growth is coming from, where we're really harnessing it, when we think of both from a lot of like retention economy, subscription economy, whatever you want to call it, and also to the world of, just expansion and doing a better job of cross-sell and upsell. That's not just a pre-sales motion of what we need to support, right? We need to bring customer success on board, and we need to think about what they do differently. We need to approach that differently. So it really is a people, process, and technology really kind of paradigm shift in a way, right? To use an old overused term, but it's really exciting in that time right now because what's happening in the vendor world is there's going to be a little bit of consolidation, but there's also AI and workflow optimization, really cool new developments that are enabling these capabilities for better collaboration, better insights, more contextual relevance, better, really getting that idea of where the customer is and what they need to be. So all those changes, right? And marketing kind of plays into that. So Liz and I are going to be really close. Sales automation is a big part of it. And I'll be covering that. But also that those tools that have helped sellers are going to be helping even more people. So you're looking at companies like Gong and SalesLoft and all these other really cool companies, Clary and Chorus, come in there and even Monday, right? Project management companies are becoming more like CRM than they are project management. So there's a really cool evolution going on. And I'm just here to, kind of glom onto that and give my thoughts and recommendations, advise those guys but also advise the practitioners out there as they're kind of looking to modernize and just get everyone on the same page because we've been siloed for forever, right? We got to finally break that down. Maybe we'll finally do it.
Liz is one of our favorite people. So my mind is spinning with the idea of putting you two together in a room.
Yeah, she just says all the trouble. Yeah, we're going to get in a lot of trouble and it's going to be fun.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
But you have...
imagine.
Sorry, Ralph, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Easy does it. You are... Go forward, as you are the more silent one of us.
It's true. What I was wondering, and I think what will be educational for our listeners, is you're the sort of guy who goes from challenge to challenge. You've done a very good job of it throughout your career. What in particular led you to join Constellation?
Yeah, sure. So Annuitas is an absolutely, I would say, peerless, and I mean that in a true sense. If you actually look at what Annuitas does as a kind of niche management consultancy focused on like go-to-market execution, right? Like nobody does what they do, and nobody does it in the way that they do it. But that said, they're end user, for lack of a better term, like what they do for customers in these kind of long cycle transformative engagements is unique. And what Adam Needles, the CEO, and I really tried to do was kind of carve out a research firm out of some of the knowledge and best practices that we got from that, as well as just my experience as a go-to-market leader, and really kind of focus a research firm on go-to-market. But I think what happened was that's like super narrow focused in a sense of, from the research side and trying to get into, a lot of these, a lot of the Annuitas clients, a lot of that kind of broad world is still trying to figure out a lot of like the blocking and tackling of like, how do I create a perpetual growth engine rather than like, they're not even ready for AI yet. They're not ready for a lot of these things, or at least they haven't built out their strategic foundations. And Annuitas is helping with that kind of stuff, but I'm an analyst, right? I'm 3-4 steps ahead thinking of like, like the blocking and tackling of AI is like, that's what people are doing now. But I need to think of like, what are the actual implications like 3, 4, 5 years down the road, right? And wasn't really kind of able to do that because our clients weren't ready for that, right? So
it didn't fit.
Yeah, it's just not a fit. So, and it's just hard because you're a one-man show kind of trying to do these things. Whereas what I really like about Constellation is there is like, it's everybody's kind of like me, right? They're all visionaries, forward thinkers, and there's a support network and a brand around the research and like forward thinking side. Whereas Annuitas is amazing as a consultancy. People didn't really know what I was doing yet, right? It was kind of weird, but they're amazing. It's an amazing company. Adam and I are still like, we're really super close. I love what they do. What they build growth engines for people in ways that like literally look at any other kind of consultancy or even like kind of go to market, whatever you want to call them, firms, like nobody does the rubber meeting the road the way they do. So, but it's an exciting time. Great for them doing what they're doing. And I'm excited about the future at Constellation.
Show the book, please. Show the book.
Oh, the book. Yeah. One of the things that I did there was write the Chief Growth Officer's Handbook. And you can go get this at annuitas.com. Give one last plug to my former employer, right? But that was really kind of a narrow focus, not a narrow focus, but it was like taking that from the go-to-market side. Like I want to grow with that, right? And I want to, Adam and I will hopefully be kind of talking about that and maybe being on stage again together sometimes talking about that, because there's this idea that's coming that I've been building around, and it's in the title. The thing is this holistic go-to-market tech stack, right? Led by a chief growth officer, or at least managed, because what you're really needing to see is the future of the C-suite needs to change. We've had these crazy things happen, right? Where we have the subscription economy and the retention economy, the everything is a service economy, and all these business models kind of changed. We did a lot of the operational and actual like revenue rec kind of things around the technology to support that, even customer support, right? Software as a service companies weren't really, they were more manufacturers than they were deliverers of things and retainers. Think of the old Siebel model, right? Like sell it and got to go find someone new, right? Perpetual licensing, We've done a lot of the changes, but the last thing we need to do is to create this kind of idea of a growth mindset and growth model that incorporates pre-sale, the sales process, right? The demand and sale experience, and the post-sale that incorporates an idea around, scalable, repeatable, predictable growth, and then creating, technology deployments that are well integrated, support that, have great data and insights and workflow, so that you're prescribing the right insights at the right time, not just to salespeople, right? To marketers, to sales, to customer success, to customer support. All of these stakeholders need to get on the same page when it comes to growth plans. Because look, I've worked at a lot of companies, I've advised a lot of companies. You look at like, where is growth coming from? And it's like, new business is still, like, at least in their plans, such a high percentage. But when you look at the best growing companies, it's like 75% of growth comes from existing customers, right? Going in, yeah. So you and then you're seeing net dollar retention numbers at like up to 150, right? So you're it's that's got to become like the muscle memory and like just the status quo, where it's not right now, right? And there's a lot of end user companies called practitioners who need that guidance, and then there's a lot of vendors who need to better message around that, both inside their own portfolios and in their ecosystems. And that's something I'm excited to help do, is powering this office of, or the role of the chief growth officer, as that becomes more like growth operations and growth strategy, rather than sales and marketing and customer success and customer support, right? So, that needs to become more holistic, and the technology needs to be aligned with that. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about a lot over the next, the foreseeable future.
However long, yeah.
It's still around about 45 minutes, to be honest. So what?
Might want to refill that water.
Yeah, better refill that water. But the honest question is, for the starting point, to kick it off in the direction after we have learned, what was your high motivation to leave a happy place where you were doing a fabulous job, getting along with Adam and wrote the book, but that you would like to start rethinking the future again a bit, in the way of, if I know now what I didn't know before, or what I wrote up, now I would like to put it into action and place. But the spinning wheel, or the flywheel idea and construct, which is visualized in many ways, is always around, what is the difference between CRM and CX? And to be honest, I would like to know about a bit your recent definition of CX, and following that, what is, by your perspective, a good CX solution? What does it have to cover to serve as the holistic stack?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a kind of a weird way that I kind of bring it all together, right? Where I believe there's like go-to-market.
I love weird.
Yeah. So there's go-to-market on top, and then underneath you have supporting technologies, right? And that's why I talk about that holistic go-to-market tech stack, because there's no one vendor that provides it all, right? So CRM and CX are very different things, right? Because what I would say is, there's CRM, which is very much like internal enabling technologies to do things, right? To track things, to manage processes, to do like customers never usually touch the CRM, right? The CX is usually like thinking about the customer experience, right? And a lot of that winds up being kind of still inbound. Like it's the customer telling us something that's either good or bad that we can learn from, right? But what I also, have talked about, and even Adam and I talked about that back at Annuitas, is the idea of like, he calls it demand experience. I would actually call it, demand experience is a good idea. Like it is a good term, the DX, where it's like, well, where do these kind of come together in that, like, what is the orchestration of touch points, process, whatever you want to call it, right? Interactions, engagements around, in a B2B, usually in B2B, but B2C kind of has some of this too, is, as we go to this kind of the Esteban Kolsky infinity loop, right? Of giving credit where it deserves. He's the first guy to do it, right? Of that subscription economy, retention economy, right? Like where CRM was built with like pre-sales opportunity management in mind, and CX was very kind of post-sale, like how are you using the product or service and how's it going, right? That DX, that demand experience, is that kind of infinity loop along that of like, how are we as an organization orchestrating our engagement so that, when someone's new, they do the right things and we get them to convert and blah, blah, blah. But then that goes back in and we understand CX feeds into it and says, well, how are they using it? So what can we learn from that? Where do we figure out our cross-sell, our upsell, our proactive and prescriptive retention strategies, right? So you build that in, and when you're doing that, you need that customer data value chain to feed all that, and that needs to be more than just the CRM or just what you're getting from your CX, which is usually small sample sets, somewhat biased, low percentage of response, that kind of stuff. So it really is, I look at this demand experience, you could call it whatever. That's why I'm kind of talking about these growth platforms, because they span the entire customer journey, and they're becoming, with AI and other, other enablers, enabling technologies, way more full journey, way more insightful, contextually, aware, and being able to provide insights that break silos, right? That become more collaborative. Absolutely. They can help customer success just as much as they help, pre-sales type people and marketing. Customer support can be both a consumer of these, but also a contributor. So it's really, changing the whole paradigm of how we think of CX versus CRM versus MarTech and all that kind of stuff. I think it's that holistic go-to-market, and a lot of it kind of falls underneath, but you have to stop thinking of like who uses it. It's like everyone should be, right? We have to get way more fluid because it's really these data and insights that need to flow rather than like sit in a siloed application, right?
10 years ago, Phil Winters wrote the lovely titled in the American language, CI Agenda. The first three letters were the most interesting trigger. CIA. And now you came to the point, touch point analysis, how the interaction is, how the brain and the customer behavior is working together. And if I see that, and the lying Esteban Kolsky 8, I recall very much and vividly that Phil used also that setup.
We used a version of it. Yeah. Phil and I worked together a lot when I was at Sugar. We did a whole global tour where we were actually doing customer journey mapping workshops. Yeah, and and then we did. We actually went into like select Sugar customers, because I was at Sugar, and we would do their customer journey map, and they were always fantastic. Like with PostNord, and I remember one, because it was one of those like aha moments where they just realized the gaps in the customer journey and the customer experience around some of their B2B stuff. And they were just like, why hadn't we thought of this before? And like come back a few months later and they're like, our time to like close the deal to revenue is now like 20 to 30% faster, because we just figured these things out that we just weren't doing, because we get really granular in these. They're like full day sessions, and there's crazy amounts of Post-it notes and all this kind of thing. And it's a highly analog, but like then gets captured digitally kind of thing. And it's a really cool exercise. Yeah. And Phil and I, we collaborated a lot between like 2014, 2016, really, bringing that customer journey stuff out around the world. It was really fun to do that with some of our cool customers. And we were, to be in these really cool businesses like one of the largest insurance providers in Mexico. Like I said, like the FedEx of the Nordics, going into like some of our big manufacturers in ANZ. Really a cool experience to do that with Phil.
And going into a casino in Macau.
Yeah, that was fascinating because we had to learn a lot around, you make a lot of assumptions in B2B, right? Because your data, like customer data, is very readily given because it's like business data. It's not super personal. You're expecting to do like shipments and other things. So, there's a lot of information that you just kind of need and it's expected. But in Macau, like you're actually not allowed. And we actually learned about this from another casino in the Schweiz in Switzerland. Like you're not allowed to like directly market to people in certain ways, especially because like Chinese government, all this stuff. So we had to figure out like building these journey maps and these like process flows of like, how do we actually get their VIP customers to like know things? And so you actually have to kind of go around the idea of like advertising gambling and all this stuff. It was a really fascinating experience to go with some of those. I don't know if we were ever able to name the casinos in Macau, but all the big ones that are in Vegas, you can make the assumption, it's their versions out of Macau. But it's always, Macau's always a cool place because it's like you're in China and Portugal at the same time, right? So it's fun.
But it is that you now know that I'm a close friend of Phil, and that I haven't had the pleasure to work as often and as much with Phil like you did, and traveled a lot. But the striking idea was one of the triggers why I thought that a lot of that, what in the analog workshops at these days, 10 years ago, which became now a bit more technology driven, and you can do it with Miro boards and all that, murals and all that stuff. But that at the end of the day, you get a better assumption, or you try to think in the benefit of your customer. Now, then you are able to ask the right questions for the interviews. And then knowing these journeys and knowing these process steps, you can definitely make better surveys and better questionnaires to get the real beef to get forward. Now,
yeah, I think so. I think what's really interesting about what AI can do in that is, like, NPS doesn't really make, there's no context, right? And you don't learn that from anything. You get numbers and you get it. It's like a temperature gauge, right? But like, why was it so hot for the last week in the United States, right? You just knew that it was hot, right? And you want to get behind that, and dig a little deeper. So the AI can understand that context and know when, kind of where, that could be either channel or who, the right person, something, because you really start to kind of identify events and signals and then respond back to that, right? So there really is like that self-learning there, to your point, things that we just couldn't even fathom even 5 years ago, right? Creating this feedback loop that is absolutely like far more valuable, because you're starting to, like, the triggers for those things aren't just case closed, right? Like, and again, it's like in some ways there's a value to that, because like you do want to take like figure out what's the raw score, right? Of like, how are we just kind of doing? But when you understand, okay, well, there were 14 interactions versus our average 4 on this case, or this sales deal closed, but we had 11 calls when we usually have 3 or 5, right? Like, I want to learn about that. Like, or if there's 12 calls and it didn't close, well, what happened there, right? So how do we dig into that, right? And how do you learn from that? So, and there's a lot of different things that you can learn. And that's why, like, when I look at where like AI meeting like real data, right? Not like the sales guy put data in a CRM, or maybe it captured metadata around a phone call was had. Well, now I'm analyzing all those things I just talked about against the text transcripts of real phone calls, real emails, real chats, texts, blah, blah, blah. I'm learning a lot, and those signals become far more valuable. And that's even like what we were doing at Support Logic in the concept of the signals. And
I recall exactly your description of how Support Logic is working and helping the agent. And now knowing that, it's very valuable to transform this into the perspective of, as nobody delivers the full stack, what could be a side of the hell of best of breed without the integration strategy and let's say harmful experiences one can make. What is a suggestion looking into the new sexy features in CRM/CX, where you had last week a nice conversation with, the way it was a bit still end of June before the cat could go out of the sack, that you are moving a bit forward. What is the CRM/CX change we do see?
Well, yeah, what I think what you're seeing is the CRM, right? And it depends on what is your take on, like, what is your CRM deployment? Like, what are the components that it has, because some people look at their CRM and then they look at their MarTech as separate things. I don't, but so let's say CRM inclusive of your marketing. You got a lot there, right? But is it also inclusive of your customer service and support? Now, but then you also have to look at your call center software, right? Like, what is your actual CCaaS? What is your call recording and analysis? Because again, where before you had these kind of siloed concepts of, well, I'm recording my calls for quality control against the support center. Now I'm recording my calls for sales coaching and enablement, right? In Gong, for example, right? And then marketing is just tracking web traffic, right? And it's like, well, now, like when I think about like what I call that customer data value chain and bringing that all together is like, it's easier now than ever, and it's getting easier and easier and easier every day. It's like the Moore's law of everything, right? But of integration of these things and data analysis and AI, doing that against like, throw things in a data lake and let AI do it. More proprietary LLMs. So against what is important to you in terms of what are your signals, what are your trigger moments, what are the things that you care about that will identify opportunities for positive things, growth, whatever you want to call it, right? So you have to start putting all these things together, but it's also like taking a look back and saying like, well, where can we consolidate, right? Because do you need like a call recording tool in your call center, but also using, why isn't Gong just like a layer, right? Or whatever, right? And it covers everything, because then, it's like, how do we get less points of like point interact, and get more that data like kind of raw into the AI mind, right? Faster and easier, right? And then so it's like it is a bit of consolidation. So you'll see M&A, but also like practitioners themselves need to start thinking like, how many times am I actually like, because like this department, this line of business leader has the recording and the system of record and the case management. Like, why isn't this like the CRM layer, right? Why isn't this the CX layer? Why isn't this the recording and then the analytics layer? So you're putting all that in. How do we make that easier, right? And get as good as we can with that, right? So there's a lot of strategizing and re-strategizing and reevaluation that has to happen, because you really want to start to think about kind of who might be doing like the AI analysis, so that we get everything into that, or is there like another AI layer? And that's where like people like Chirag that I'll be working with at Constellation, like he knows the AI stuff, and sometimes the AI tools as AI tools are better than just what like Salesforce or like Marketo or everyone's going to be doing a little bit of it. So you kind of look at these jobs to be done, and then like where's AI going to help these guys inside that? But then when you're looking at this overall strategy, it's like where's that AI layer too, right? So we're going to be working together and talking a lot about that. We just started, but there's this really interesting time of kind of re-strategizing, reevaluating, consolidating, optimizing both cost and complexity. When you think about how these things come together, because before it was like this vendor built this for this use case, but now it's like it's becoming more genericized in a good way for the end user, because they can just buy it and run it across the whole organization. So it's kind of interesting to see these changes happen, and the more I can kind of help explain that, Because again, it's still a lot of like siloed decision making, siloed strategies, 5-year plans, this and so we got to help break that down. And I'm excited to try and help Constellation get even better. They've got a fairly decent end user organization, but I want to talk to as many as I can and do more of that through a lot of the vendors. Like, let me talk to your customers. Let's get in there. Like, let's get that downstream stuff, because I've been doing a lot of that on the marketing side of things and the go-to-market leadership side, talking about it a lot as an analyst. I want to bring that together, right? So, and to help more end users, because there's a lot of cool things you can do to both, the cool thing is you save a lot of money, but you actually reduce a lot of complexity and get a faster time to value, not just in the initial deployment, but just ongoing, right? You get faster insights. The more you reduce and consolidate.
So the AI influence is making things easier, is making things more handleable, more utilizable, more analytically, more guiding. That I took with, and it is in an overall approach, such as it's not only little bits, but it is that you catch it in the framework, in its complex all. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make this little wrap up to follow.
Yeah, it's a good way to. Yeah, it's a good way to summarize it.
Also to follow.
I never know if you're just like putting my speech to text and running it through Gemini or something, and then bulleted response.
Yeah. I know we've got a session topic that we're supposed to be exploring, but I want to go back just for a second to what you had to say about customer experience, CX. It's a fascinating way of looking at it, and it as demand experience. Essentially turning CX into a growth topic, which is not how most of us would tend to look at CX. It's a new development, or at least a new way of looking at it. So I have to ask, are there any things within a company that are not potential growth factors? It seems like everything is possible.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by growth, right? Because it's like the HRM system is like not like HR and the technology there, but that's about personal growth inside and helping your people on their career. You can be as hokey as you want, right? But I mean, when you think of B2B, right, you have to look at every interaction, because they're not as we often blur our concept and how we think of relationships.
Yeah.
Like even in like B2C, right? Like, what is your relationship with Coca-Cola? Do you know what I mean? Like, a big brands, right? Like, but they have to do a certain amount of, whether that's advertising and blanket or other types of outreach and creating, app experiences and all that type of stuff, so that you're more top of mind, right? And what is the cadence? Like, I think we think the cadences are like this all the time, but they're not, especially in B2B. In B2B, they might be like once a quarter, right? And maybe even once a year, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing things, right? But is it every day? No, right? And it's not that kind of thing. But given that, that's why like you really and what's happening is that sales guys in B2B have like hundreds of accounts, right? So how do you better organize and think of that concept of like how are my accounts doing? So what are those, like, that's why it's got to be as like automated and like intelligent and like almost like idiot proof, right? So that when you've got when you got 400 accounts, right? Tell me when something is interesting happening inside one of them, because I probably might be using a Gainsight or even using my Salesforce or my Sugar, whatever it is, to figure out when I might want to talk to them in a structured way of like, this is their contract, right? And this is their use, and this is what they have, and this, and there's things that you can pull from that, and AI and ML can do really good jobs of like structuring that outreach. But then when it becomes like dynamic to like, is that person doing something, saying something, feeling something, whatever it is, right? That I can actually be like super proactive and create those really interesting moments of like hey, we're a company that like cares about you, or we're, we can jump in, whatever it is, right? How do you uncover that, right? In a way when you've got overworked, over kind of, over saturated in terms of how many accounts they have sales guys, right? And I'm not saying anyone does that like amazing right now, but that's kind of the idea, right? Where you take that customer experience concept of like these like highly structured, usually like low response, super biased, someone had either a super bad experience or a super good experience, the muddled middle, excluded middle, whatever. Like you don't get a lot of that. So how do we start to actually like understand more about what's happening? And especially in between, it's like I used to call it the white space, right? Like that white space between interactions and learning, because that's when, like, without being creepy, without doing all that kind of stuff, you can actually learn from what people are doing as it relates to your business, your brand, the product, service, especially in B2B, because you can figure these things out, right? Because if you're a SaaS provider, you start tracking usage, right? Pendo is a part of a holistic go-to-market tech stack if you're a SaaS provider, right? Like that type of data, because you can start to see, when are the dips? Why is no one logging in? Why is that? Why are people logging in a lot? Like what's going on? Why are people, only logging in for a short time, right? Or whatever it is, right? Yep. So you can start to learn these things and you can figure that stuff out. And in between those typical QBRs or other, kind of setup meetings, you can do outreach and say, is everything okay? Or what do you do? And not a lot of people are implementing that beautifully or in a sophisticated way, but it's getting easier, right? Because that's where the AI comes in, and it can actually tell you like, hey, these things are happening, here's your priority list of people to call today or email or do whatever, and with Gen AI, here's the email, edit it to make more sense, because it's probably like okay, right? And we're there today, right? You can do that today, and that's pretty exciting, because that takes CX to a new level. Yeah, sorry, Rob.
NPS is more or less dead, and you go for smarter targeting by AI and AI support to replace simply a backward-looking temperature getting tool.
Yeah.
That is a very provocative thesis. We had a discussion exactly last week, in a German newspaper, where they were running hot on that topic, fighting on surveys, NPS, and all that. And you literally caught me with the description of, it's nice to know the temperature, but I do not change the climate or the weather. So I have to go in a different direction. So I take with me that you are one of the passionate promoters of let the smart things help you, not do the complete work, but let them help you.
Yeah, of course. Because again, it's like when you look at, it's like, what do people do? They say it's like data becomes information, becomes insights, becomes actionable insights, become contextual. It's like, how do you go up that value chain of what information can bring? And like NPS is almost barely data, but it's data. It's like this is the temperature, but then you want to find out again, like what is causing it, and then which direction is it going, right? And what is that trend going up or down, right? And then what can I do to fix the problem, right? Or what do I do to take advantage of the positive, right? And that's and again, it's none of this takes humans out of the equation. It just amplifies their abilities, right? And to build on relationships, to optimize, their productivity and all that. So I mean, it's all very positive stuff. Like, especially, like I said, especially in B2B, because there's not like, no one wants their suppliers and vendors to be bad at servicing them, right? So that's the beauty of B2B. It's not like, there's no like is Google evil, is Meta evil, it's not really that kind of thing, because it's all win-win, right? If I can understand more about your usage of my product and make recommendations that, do I sell more? Do I maybe sell even more profitably? Yes, but that helps you too, right? So it's it's very win-win. It's super symbiotic in this relationship, and like nobody gets removed from the equation. There's no human obviation, right? It's all helping the existing. maybe you have like the same amount of salespeople and they aren't super overworked and they still have 400 when you probably should have double the sales force, but that's not for me to prescribe, right?
Yeah.
But you're not getting rid of salespeople, right? Salespeople aren't leaving the equation, especially in B2B. So they're just getting more tools to help and become more trusted advisors to their clients, right? And that's all
Which
it
is
is.
fine. Which is cool.
That's totally fine. There's no there's no evil data scenario there. AI is not, it's not Skynet in that sense,
Now, to my way
Very
of
good
thinking,
that you mentioned that.
yeah.
Yeah, or Colossus, what we had as an example as well, even older. We dig in often the question, where there is money, where there is beef, there are complaints and worries, such as not only employment and keep the human in the loop and the bad AI scenarios, but where is the positive, where is the positive side of the force? And also there is the question, does AI have an ROI or at least a payoff? And what is your thinking, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, when you look at AI across the board, and when I look at AI is like a generator of things, right? Code, and especially is like, think about building this holistic go-to-market tech stack, and like, where have we been in, again, integration technologies and the leaps forward that we can take, where the AI can start to look at your stack and say, this should be talking to this should be talking, and then just do it, right? So that is a huge ROI right there, because now that you're looking at integration in this super like dynamic and fluid motion, where it's not like hard coded, hardwired, difficult, point to point. We went from like soap to rest to iPass to like, now like AI generated integration of like thinking like, I can take from this, I can pull from that. It's social media, it's this, and create these, really great composites of your customer and these views and pull the insights out and then drive them down. And then it kind of manages itself. That's huge, right? That's an ROI almost incalculable in and of itself, right? So the ROI of AI is undoubted and has already been proven. It's just more of like where do we go from the intangibles to the tangibles, right? And we'll get there, right? It's, when you get the right use case, that's when you really start to see the ROI take off, right? Because even think about generative AI in marketing, right? Like if you're just gonna not do any work and just try to say, hey, AI, write all my content and emails and drip campaigns and blah blah blah, it's going to be bad return, right?
It's going to hurt.
Yeah, but if you're leveraging it for like, okay, well, I've done the work and understanding, like, here's my conversation track architecture, here's my persona matrix, and like now you're starting to apply AI into this actual strategy that you have, you will get better responses. You can do better A/B testing. You can do all this type of stuff. You can build, much more dynamic pathways around both, the voice and the text and all the things you do. And it makes sense, and the customer's not like, what the heck is this, right? And it's consistent, and it's brand aligned, right? Blah blah blah, right? That ROI is going to be way off the charts than if you just said like, easy button, ChatGPT, do my job, right? And that's obvious, but I mean, but then if you look at that again, just nuance that against every use case, it's like anything without strategy is going to fail, right?
Voila.
Because what did people do with CRM, right? They bought Salesforce or whatever because they thought they had to. And then they didn't do but it's like, it's not Salesforce's fault. Salesforce can do whatever you want it to do, but you have to know what you want it to do. And just thinking like, give it to the sales guys. What's the sales guy know how to be an admin for the, you're setting people up to fail or setting up the project up to fail, right? So it's the same idea with AI, right? It's it's garbage in, garbage out, no matter what you're talking about, whether that's CRM at the foundational level, AI in going forward. So strategy has to be there. You have to know what you're doing. Like you have to think first, right? Take a step back, think about what you want.
Thank you very much. That is the most important, valuable reflection on ongoing CRM projects I'm involved in, such as please think before, think twice, make a plan, and what is your goal, what you want to achieve,
Yeah.
and then go for the next step.
Every phase, almost down to the field level when you're doing configuration
Yeah.
of CRM for the first time. Do your 5 levels of why, right? Ask why, then why, then why, and you'll get to things like, oh, wait, do we really need to do this? Or do we need to do it like this? And AI is kind of the same, but it's all the same way, right? Like, get to that. And what AI will get better at doing once you're started is like uncovering inefficiencies, understanding roles, and then where, okay, hey, you have a new user. Well, what do they do? Okay, well, here's this whole list of configurations that you would have probably had to manually do 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to set their ACLs this way. They're going to get access to these fields. They're going to access to these modules, this and that. And AI is going to just create that whole user profile and that individual user's experience. What screens, what dashboards, what little, charts do they want to see? And building that on a one-to-one basis, the AI is going to be able to do that like that. It kind of already can today, right? And that's what's really exciting, because again, it's not taking anyone's job away. It's just making the end user's job better, allowing the administrator to work on like strategic level things of how they want to make the application better. And these mundane, but also like optimized mundane tasks of like user configuration, role configuration, even workflow configuration. The AI is going to be like, yeah, I did it, right? Oh, and I made it better because I'm iteratively testing it against things, right? So yeah, it's definitely a pro thing, but you do need to have like a strong foundation first, because the AI doesn't know. If the AI doesn't have that foundation to work with, it's just going to go in any direction, right? And that's bad, right? That's never, because you're not going to get anything that's relevant to your business, right? So that's kind of where it is. But strong strategy, strong foundation, aligning your people, your process, technology, Then you apply AI to it, and you're off to the races, and you're creating, you're creating a hyper engine,
And it is important that we realize it's not Tinkerbell flying around with her magic fairy powder, but it is, if you combine smartness, laziness in a positive way, and you go for the more personalized, more effective way that I can talk to him or her about topics they are really interested in, and combining a persona with the right messaging is, with the support of AI, from my perspective, a lot easier than fiddling around for a week to get the right text, go to my superior, make these endless rounds of fighting about the last words in the sentence. Just shoot, do an A/B test, what is working better, and then go for the next. Yeah, it's faster.
Exactly. I mean, and that's where it comes, this is where it's going to be really interesting, because you need to provide a really great platform for that. But pretty soon, like, is a CRM going to have a sales application, or are you going to talk to it and talk about how your sales works and who your territories are and who your salespeople are? And then it's just going to build that system off the platform. Like, is that where Salesforce is going? Is that where CRM's going? Right? That's kind of interesting, right? I don't call it headless, but I mean, it's more like it just kind of, it bespokes itself, and you're just accessing this really smart platform that gets the use cases, and then it kind of makes it one-to-one, right? And that's, that's a little science fiction right now, but that's kind of where it's going. That's where,
and Rogers, they dreamed of it for a long time.
Yeah.
So now we make it happen with a bit help of the technology.
Yeah,
absolutely. And
so
I think
we were touching a bit platforms. I was curious, if you look to the aside of the Blue Cloud guys from San Francisco, who else is having some of the components you would like to use for your holistic stack?
Well, I mean, like I said, no one is even close to being a single, you cannot create a go-to-market, like a holistic go-to-market tech stack with one provider. Like,
understood.
Yeah.
Take for granted.
Salesforce does a good job. Yeah. I mean, it's like everybody's missing like critical pieces, right? But like, when Salesforce is pretty close, but like Adobe with, has some really interesting things, could make acquisitions, but also has good integration, good platforms, has good commerce, has everything except for maybe like the what I would call a lot of the CRM, right? But if you look at like Salesforce and Adobe combined, it checks a lot of boxes, right? You look at like where HubSpot's trying to go, they still need to flesh out some of the core CRM stuff, but trying to get into more commerce, trying to get and doing that. And again, are you doing this for SMB, looking at mid-market, looking at enterprise, right?
Yeah.
You look at a company like Zoho, they do a fantastic job of like a lot of it for SMB to SME, and now creeping into enterprise. Like, you look at Zoho, they've got like multi-million user deployments of some of their applications. They are ready for prime time. Like before, when I used to compete against Zoho, other lifetimes, I could talk to like, oh, they're just not scalable. Now the scalability, the reliability, and now the sophistication of the products for larger sophisticated use cases, they've got that covered. It's like, look out for those guys, because
they are fast and they are scalable and they are good and they are reliable and they don't take you an arm and a leg just to make your job easier.
Well, they have a thing, just, they announced the CRM for everyone thing, and that's almost just even like a small part of it. But when you actually look at like how the Zoho won, take the components out of it. I'm just talking about just that pricing concept of like enable everybody to have visibility, collaborative, blank, whether it's sales, just to really foster that collaborative, culture inside an organization enabled by technology. They get that. And like, you're even seeing Oracle kind of start to get it. Like they haven't announced a lot of that stuff, but you're going to see them get really, really smart about how they, for the enterprise, now that they've made the fusion kind of thing and moving to the cloud. Oracle's even reinventing around some of those objects, because it's like, you have to get everyone on the same page. You got to break down those silos, right? So there's some really cool stuff that they, and it's, Zoho's kind of killing it when it comes to it doing in the SMB, SME, as they go into the more enterprise. Look out, because they've got a really, it's an incredibly compelling concept.
Where do you see the open source stack, such as Odoo?
I mean, look, that's like IT culture, right? There's always going to be those CIOs, those smart guys inside that say like, why do we want to go to commercial off-the-shelf software and pay subscription fees when I've got to manage this spaghetti anyway? And again, like AI kind of might even make those approaches more viable, because the AI will do some of that spaghetti management, the integration, customers, some of that. But again, the pace of innovation, the trust, and especially as you get into some AI things, broader data stuff, like indemnification and just having I don't want to say throat to choke, but that kind of idea of like having a vendor that gets a lot of this stuff and having really knowing it. I don't know how the open source guys continue to stack up. Like, look, some of the stuff's pretty good, it's viable, but
there is one which
you're paying for one way or the other, right? So you're gonna have extra admin people. They're not cheap. So it's like, do you want subscription costs or do you want admin costs? Right?
The opportunity within the middle, something out of the smartness of the Zoho concept from Zoho 1, you find the Belgian Odoo. Yeah, have a look at that. And I also encourage to have a look in CloudOffice and in Greenrobe. It depends on how much platform you want to have, how much altogether, and that you need. What we learned from you is you need anyhow some bits and pieces to add. So you have to have a very smart integration, API and REST APIs and connectivity. That's another learning I take.
And backwards compatibility of APIs and insurance of that, because if you're doing a bunch of like either homegrown or open source and doing that stuff, a lot of times that integration, like AI is not there yet to like manage that perfectly for you, right? So having the vendors and understanding your ecosystem before you purchase, like, do these guys have a real relationship with X? Is there a cloud connector that is backwards compatible, bi-directional? They're both updating it at the same time, that kind of thing. So you really want to manage that in an intelligent way, because the integrations are going to be constant forever, like always on. So doing that yourselves can be dangerous.
Well, in recognition of your time and the fact that I know how garrulous you can be, I'm going to hit you with the final last words outro bit. What, in your opinion, is the next significant development in enterprise AI that we should expect?
Yeah, like I think I kind of hinted at it, right? Where I see it going is really in the taking core platforms and writing the applications for you based on using conversational intelligence and conversational ideas. It's like, build me, let's take a really simple application of it now, right? It's like, okay, you're using Salesforce or some CRM, right? But then you're having
we have
sugar or whatever, right? It's certain vendors are going to get there faster than others. Let's be honest, right? But and it's just where people have been in their AI journey, right? But say you're using a CRM that is very advanced with its AI and its Gen AI and all these types of things, and you're already using it for sales automation, marketing automation, customer support automation, blah blah blah. But then you're doing your annual event, right? You're going to be able to say, okay, now, hey, build me a soup to nuts event management experience that includes, but is not limited to, right? Because it's actually going to think what you might have not told it, right? Build me the outbound messages, build me the registration page with the forms, score those people properly, figure out, create the category inside the marketing automation system, create tag it against any existing related opportunities, existing accounts, so that I can see who's coming, who's not coming, track attendance, build all that stuff, and then have cases. So if people have issues or questions, create cases that again are related and come back to that, and it just builds that. And then you've got it. And it's a UX and it's all these types of things. Like, that's where I see it coming to, where you're not no one is going to a screen and clicking and dragging and coding. You just talk to it and say, build me that. And it does it, and it does it really fast, right? And of course, are you going to be able to polish it, configure it before you turn it live? Yeah, of course. But it's going to be stuff that would take weeks, takes minutes, and that's where I think we're getting. In a few years, we'll be there because it's almost there now, right? You can ask your Gen AI tools to build you some pretty interesting stuff. It's not always great, but it's functional and it's there, right?
Yeah,
so
it does wonders to reduce your time on task.
Well, exactly. Again, it's like, because again, do you want IT thinking about building custom applications on top of X platform to manage an event that's, and the cool thing is that you can redo it each year. You can reuse that one, and then you can tell the AI like, okay, well, we'll track the all the activity this year versus last year. Start to give me analytics on that. Where are we tracking on attendance? That kind of stuff. So it's like, or do you want IT to be managing that, or do the marketing people in your organization have the bandwidth or the experience to build that? Do salespeople want to build that? No. Does the support team have the budget or time? But if I can just go do it, and one of my admin of blank can just say, sit there with the CMO or whoever runs that event and be like, okay, here's what we want. Talk to a prompt or type it into a prompt, and it just is made. That's fantastic, right? Because that's talk about productivity, right? And again, it's not going to be perfect at the first iteration, but that's the cool thing is like you can take that base thing. Oh, change X, Y, and Z, add X, Y, and Z, take off X, Y, and Z, add integration to this thing, right? To our commerce engine so people can buy their ticket, right? That kind of thing. So that's automatically done, right? So that's where we're going. It's pretty cool.
Marvelous. Now over to you, Marshall.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that is as good a place to end as any. Martin, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Your insight and your ability to carry a conversation are wonderful.
And your passion.
We're going to have you back. So get used to the idea.
Well, yeah, no, it's this will be the first of many in the new role at Constellation. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me. It's always, as always, great conversation, a lot of fun, and thanks for everyone watching. It's always a good time.
All right. So next week, y'all can tune in when we dive into the idea of successful digitization, transformation, and personalization. That's lots of Asians. With our guest, Christian Peter. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for that.
Awesome.
Until then, thank you.
Take care.
And be well.